missed. So thank you so much for joining. I want to welcome you all, and I also want to introduce Michael Ball, the Product Manager for Perform. Michael here is going to present on the competencies in Totara Perform. I am merely a facilitator today. I'll be doing a little bit of housekeeping at the start, and then I will be keeping an eye on the chat and directing any questions that you might have for Michael periodically through the presentation. If you have any questions, do just shout out on the chat. We may push them to the end. We'll have some time for questions at the end if they're particularly complicated, but in context, please do feel free to ask any questions you might have. So Michael is in control, there we go. So just a little housekeeping before we kick off. I've already said about the questions are welcome in the chat. This session is also being recorded. It'll be available in the Totara community a little while after we finish up and process the recording and cut out all of our technical checks at the start and hopefully that feedback. It's available in the partner area of the community, and a reminder that this is a partner-only presentation. While you can take some of the screenshots and use them internally, we would ask you keep the majority of this to yourselves at this time, although Michael will probably go into a little bit more detail about what you can and can't reuse across the webinar screenshots. And there will be a discussion forum open following this webinar for any other questions that you might have, as well as for anyone who's listening to this recording in the future. We're still here for you in terms of chat, so do post your questions and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. All right, I will hand you over to Michael.
Thank you very much, Meredith. As Meredith said, I'm the Product Manager for Totara Perform. So we've been working on the competencies feature for a little bit over a year now, coming to an end of this development. So I just wanted to give a bit of background to what we've been doing and why we've been doing it. So as my screen says, it's widely accepted at the moment that there are skills gaps appearing in many industries, and is having a large impact on organisations' ability to effectively deal with change within their organisation. And there are many accepted ways of dealing with this as well. So when you look at the options out there, people hire in contractors to fill the gaps temporarily, to try and upskill face-to-face, and bring in highly paid staff that actually fill the gap for a permanent basis, but it's very costly to organisations. So what we are looking to do is provide a solution to help people upskill their existing teams rather than going down those alternative methods. And as it says, it's where a competency management tool comes in, allowing organisations to map the skills they require to be successful to positions, map those positions to the training, the learning, the actions that need to be taken, and then enable people to, from within the platform, gain those new skills and evidence those new skills. So there's an article here from Forbes, which I can share on the forums afterwards. That's the stance we've taken. We're looking to help people fill that skills gap from within the platform. And just a little slide from hr.com. So from one of their recent surveys on what's driving learning in their people's organisations. So you can see here that 3 of the top 4 items all around skills or career development. So it supports the fact that people are needing to upskill their staff members to keep up with the changing skill sets required to make them successful in their siloed areas. And the reason we feel that this is the perfect time to update this functionality is that with the integrated ecosystem that we're going to be offering, people will be able to understand their skill sets and the missing areas that they have. With Totara Perform, they'll be able to find content and be able to start attending things like face-to-face training sessions through Totara Learn, and then sharing their experiences with Totara Engage, so that they have the full ecosystem of people helping each other upskill, making it a much more efficient way of working. And some of the benefits that this can have are quite significant on the key areas such as employee engagement, talent retention. Talent retention is a kind of a contentious area around why would I upskill my staff so they can leave, but at the same time there's the same question of what happens if you don't upskill them. So helping people be creative and innovative, responding, as I've mentioned a couple of times, to market changes, and obviously having quite a large impact with the right skills on your revenue and profitability. I'm just going to move on to the demo. So the first area we're going to cover is the criteria. So within the development, this has been one of the key areas that we focused on. It's ensuring that people are able to set criteria for what people need to do or the skills they need to show to become proficient. The way we've built this is in a pluggable and extensible way. So the criteria that are here can be easily built upon without having to touch core code. That's partially for us to be able to extend in the near future, but also making it easier for partners to be able to meet the needs of their subscribers. So the criteria available at the point of go live for competencies will be manual rating. So a manager, an appraiser, or a user being able to rate themselves. And that will be able to rate any level within the scale. So as soon as they have that capability, they'll be able to rate people. A learning plan pathway. So being able to backport the old functionality within learning plans, enable people that were running their competencies through learning plans to be able to also use the new functionality. Through the aggregation of competencies, so saying that you must complete child competencies or other competencies unrelated within the platform to be able to become skilled within a particular other competency. So an example of that could be something like fire safety. So you need to be proficient in fire safety, and there are other competencies such as using a ladder, for example. You might have to gain that competency to then become proficient within the parent competency. So course completion, and flexible courses and linked courses are technical terms. People will recognise linked courses from the functionality that's already there. So you're able to link courses to a competency and then state that those linked courses must be completed to become proficient. But then we also have introduced flexible courses. So within our new admin interface, you can select any course from the platform and say that these must be completed to achieve a certain level of proficiency within the competency. We have activity assignment, so this replaces the default value. So on activation of the assignment, the user will achieve the rating that you push this criteria against. And then we've also introduced activities completion, so to say that a user must complete a certain set of activities within a certain set of courses to become a certain level of proficient. And just to highlight that something that has changed for those of you that know the current functionality is within competencies from now on, you'll be able to set criteria against each level of the proficiency scale. So it's not that you complete a set of courses and instantly achieve the top rating. You can work your way up the levels of proficiency. And there are additional criteria that we really want to work on as soon as this is out. That's program completion, submission of appropriate evidence. So we've reworked the evidence functionality, which we talked about previously at the partner event. So people being able to submit evidence that shows that they have actively done something in the workplace that makes them proficient, and also checklists. So this checklist is very prevalent in places like the NHS and the health services, where people have to go through a list of things that they need to have shown and that their manager can check off to give them a level of proficiency. And so they're the key areas that we've introduced on criteria. Yes.
There's no questions at this time.
Perfect. So I'm flying through. So now I'm going to move into the administration screens. So this first screen is how you create an achievement path, and just to cover off what an achievement path is. So as you can see from this screen, you have the competency of serving the customer. From here, you have listed the proficiency levels. So we have not competent, we have competent with supervision, and we have competent. So you can set paths for each of these levels within the rating scale, which the user must complete to achieve that rating. So for example here, to achieve competence, you must complete a set of linked courses and a set of flexible courses. And there is the option to have and or, so you could have or, and then you have a separate achievement path. So different groups of users can work their way towards competent in different ways. Just to highlight also on this page, you can set the overall rating calculation. So you can have prioritized, which we have here, or we can have the highest level achieved. So for example, here we have a manager is able to rate, and you are able to rate yourself, but you're also able to achieve competent through completing these courses. So in this scenario with prioritized, the manager's rating sits above the learning that they have to do. So therefore it would overwrite, the manager's rating would overwrite the proficiency they'd achieved. So a manager could rate the user down to competent with supervision or not competent, depending on the organisation's view on what classes is proficient and what's more important.
Just the one question in the chat from Tony. What are flexible courses?
So flexible courses is just being able to select any courses from within the course catalogue to give a user the proficiency level. It's the terminology we've chosen, and it may not be the best, but it is all covered in the documentation we'll be providing, and it's not displayed to the end user, so they won't actually see flexible or flexible courses or linked courses. That's just an admin term. So to the end user, they're just courses that they need to complete.
Okay, another one just through from David Shaw. Hi David, can you change the priority after you've set it up? Doesn't look like you can drag those about on the screen.
You can change the priority once it's been done, and this edit button here then enables the drag, and you can move things around afterwards.
Great. And Tony can ask, and chairs, can temporary managers be assigned?
Not at the moment. To temporary managers to assign it. So no, not at the moment, but we are looking at the role system as part of the work on Total Perform to see if we can make that more flexible. And this is just taking on the current permission system at the moment.
Yeah, and thanks from Tony, very polite over there at Kenio, aren't they?
Cool.
Yeah,
I will
that's
move on. So once these have been applied, you can assign these competencies. So we've centralized this, so there's not adding courses or programs across the platform. There's a dedicated achievement path page, and then also there's a dedicated assignment page. So we've centralized the actions that need to be taken by an administrator to simplify this process. So we have introduced quite a lot of new user interface for the assignments. So an administrator can go through, select any number of competencies from any frameworks, and we've introduced filtering to see if you're selecting competencies that have been assigned before, that have never been assigned, have been assigned to certain positions, and you can select based on types. You select the competencies that you want to give to a group of users. You'll see that updated live in the shopping basket. Once you've chosen all of the competencies that you want to give to a group of users, go for the assign button, and then you can you can create this assignment of competencies and give it to an audience position, organization, or manually selected individual users. And you can create multiple assignments of the same group of competencies. So just once you've selected that group of competencies and assigned it to one group doesn't prevent you from creating exactly the same assignment and giving it to a new group of users for a different reason.
Okay. Rose is asking, we have numeric rating system to indicate competencies. Does Perform support numeric ratings?
Yes, it does. We've not changed the rating scales in any way other than providing some clarity around the way it's presented to the admin interface, but you can create, as you can now, create the rating scales that you want to use These are just some examples we've put together, but yeah, rating scales, numeric is fine.
Wonderful.
So yeah, that's how you assign them. You'll have multiple groups, and users can be assigned to the same competency more than once for different reasons. So a user may be assigned a competency because they're in an audience and because they have a certain position as well. They'll see 2 records, but at the moment for this current implementation, they will always sit with the same rating across the different competencies. In the future, we do look to introduce different achievement paths and different rating levels required for different reasons. So for example, a senior nurse may require a higher rating than a standard nurse, and therefore that would be different, but that is for later releases. So this is how a user can review and track their assignments. I'm going to pause this video quickly just to show you. So at the top of the screen, for each of the assignments that you've just created in the administration screen, so this is the end user view of their competency profile. So for each of the assignments, the user will be able to track their progress towards that group of competencies, and they'll see the name of the assignment reason across the top. Underneath, they'll see a corresponding graph that can either be, and I skip slides, they can either see a bar graph or a spider chart, or if they want to and they don't want to see the graphs, they can see a list view of the competencies they've been assigned. So as you'll be able to see from the video, the graphs are interactive, and a user's able to track where they are now with their level of proficiency compared to where they need to be. And so they can see the size of the gap between where they are and where they need to be on the spider diagram and the bar chart. And something to highlight here is that that's a percentage between where they are and where they need to be, which enables you to have competencies with different rating scales on the same graph.
No questions? Of course, I know you mean graph.
Yeah, graph. But there's some configuration around how many competencies are best to display on different graph types. But we'll cover that in the documentation. But yeah, and then from here, this can be used as a navigation tool as well. So if a user can see a gap between this competency, teeth whitening, apologies for the data, they will be able to click through to this competency and find a lot more detail about what they need to do to close that gap, which we'll cover on the next slide. Not on the next one, but one after. So from here, you can also, as a user, assign your own competencies. So when competencies are created by the administrators, it can be set that an end user is able to self-assign that competency. So even though it's not been assigned as part of a group that they're within, they might see that they need that skill to progress to another position after having a conversation with their manager. So they're able to move from the competency profile, which I showed you here, into the self-assignment screen, select the competencies that are available to them, assign, and then they will appear as a new self-assign set of competencies within the tracking up here, and then they'll also get a separate graph to track those competencies. Following on from that, users for completing manual ratings will have access to this manual rating screen. From here, if you have multiple people that you're able to rate, you can select the appropriate person. Sometimes you might have a dual role, so you might be a manager for some people and an appraiser for others. You can select the type of person you're rating as, which will filter the list. Or if you've got a big list of people, you can search for the user you want to rate. You can click through and perform ratings for that user. From here, you can see the number of competencies that are available for you to rate. This might not be the full list of their competencies, but they're where you have permission to rate that user, and you can see where that competency was last rated.
So I just want to double check with Leslie, who asked a question that you answered it. How is visibility handled so those managing competencies and end users only see the competencies available to them? Did you just explain that?
Yep. So as a manager or as a an appraiser, you're given permission within the standard system, and if you're an appraiser for that user or a manager for that user, then you get access to this.
Great, thank you.
So from that screen, this screen here will be the same for a user able to rate themselves, or for a manager or an appraiser who's able to rate the user. So we have the manual rating screen. So from here, you're able to filter the competencies that are available to different types, to the reasons they've been assigned, the rating history, and they're also grouped by the competency framework that they're within, so that each of the competencies that you're looking to rate has the same scale with each other. And just so we can play the video and you can see what they can do. There is only one competency that I rate, so it won't be too painful. So from here, they're able to select the proficiency rating, leave a comment with the rating, they can do multiple at the same time, and then submit the ratings, which then become available to the end user. So this might be me rating myself or me rating another user.
There's a question from David Shaw. Excuse me. If you are unassigned from a competency, do you permanently lose all records of your competence? E.g., you get unassigned by mistake, then get it given again. Do you start afresh, or does it remember your previous progress?
Depends on the configuration. So we're aware that there is different organisations need different approaches to this. So if you're unassigned and then reassigned, then you don't lose your proficiency because you've still done the courses, you've still uploaded the evidence. So if you're unassigned and then reassigned, then you start back where you were. But if you're unassigned, then generally you would stop tracking against that competency. So if you completed a new course, for example, even though you've been assigned it in the past, it wouldn't update your proficiency rating. But we're fully aware that some organisations don't work that way, and common sense kind of says just because you're not assigned to it from the reason you were before doesn't mean that you haven't kept that skill up. So there is a configuration option which enables you to automatically create a new assignment when you leave that audience and class it as a manual assignment, and then you can carry on tracking against that competency. So both options are available, just depending on how the organisation wants to work that.
Okay. And Mark Edmonds, hi Mark, is asking, do the rating comments appear in reporting?
They do.
They do?
Yes, sorry, I had to think through it. They do. So I can show you one more screen in a second, which is an embedded report. No, it's not, it's a custom page, so bear with me 2 seconds. I'll finish that question, answering that question on the next slide. Okay. So the next screen is being able to upskill. So as I mentioned, from this page, you can navigate to details of what needs to be done to achieve this competency. This video shows a user navigating through to their competency, being shown their details page. So you can see here, they click through to the sales consultant. You can see across the top that they've been assigned this competency because they're in multiple audiences or hold multiple different positions. You can see the rating they have as extremely competent at the moment. But then when I scroll down the page, what you'll also see is who's rated them in the past. So you can see who's rated them, the date they were rated, and what the comment was. The manager and the appraiser haven't provided any ratings at the moment. But you can also see the learning that they need to do to become proficient. So to become extremely competent, they need to complete the courses, having difficult conversations and having difficult conversations. That's bad configuration. And you can see that for each level within the competency scale. So for each level here, you can see what they need to do, how far they've progressed towards that. And then you can navigate from here to the course that they need to do, or the other competency in some examples. And
Mark Melia, that's the day of the marks. How does the rating handle the hierarchy? Are we talking about the competency hierarchy, Mark, or
how does the rating handle the hierarchy?
Might need you to refine that question. I'm sorry, Mark. Competency hierarchy, yeah. So how does the rating handle the competency hierarchy? is that when you maybe rate a child competency?
So if you become proficient in a child competency and that child competency has been used as a criteria for a higher level competency, then as soon as you become proficient in the criteria, then it impacts the higher level competency. So it will only impact if it has been used as criteria. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Not sure it's the question, the answer to the question. So Matt, if you let us know, he's just said, so you always rate at a lower level competencies?
No, so if a lower level competency hasn't been used as a criteria, then it doesn't impact the higher level competency in any way, shape or form. The lower level competency has to be used as a criteria to impact the status of the higher level competency. So we haven't got a connection between, just because there's a parent and child competency doesn't mean necessarily that the child should impact the parent. Sometimes people use it to just organise their competencies rather than it being a criteria. So we've given greater flexibility by making child competencies available as criteria.
Okay. Can I ask you one more? Yeah,
yep.
That's okay, thanks. Leslie, when you assign ratings that end up applying to the whole framework, which hasn't been flexible enough in the past, need ratings flexibility in the framework. Not sure if that is his question. So I think that's, you happy that's covered?
Not yet. So I think if I understand that question correctly, what you're saying is that you need to have different rating scales applied to individual competencies within a single framework. If that is the question, then we haven't covered that as part of Perform version 1, but we do have it as a requirement to be prioritised at a later stage.
Great. Right, I'll stop interrupting you.
So no, just to finish that off, so all competencies within a single framework have the same rating scale at present. And I'm just waiting for the video to finish, but so that's where you learn what you need to do and where you navigate to. So Mark, your question previously about will the actions taken on a competency appear within reporting? So one way of tracking everything that's happened on a competency is through the activity log within the competency profile. So the overview shows you your current proficiency rating and what you need to do to become proficient and what you've done in the past, whereas the activity log shows you every action that's happened on a competency. So from here you can see the reasons you were assigned, the ratings you were given, and what you did to achieve those ratings. As again, apologies for some of the data in here. It will show you when you were assigned, the reasons you were assigned, the ratings you were given by other people, the comments that were made by those people at the point of the rating, and allows you to filter on the different reasons you were assigned. And in the future that can be updated with more information if needed, but that enables people. In the past, we know that with learning, for example, users challenge their administrators about reasons that the status is what it is, or they think they've done something that they haven't, or they actually have done something and the system hasn't picked it up. So this is a way of helping that end user track what's actually happened before having to go to administrator or before having to have reports run to do that. So it's an aid for the administrators and the end users.
Excellent. That's the end of the great questions.
So what the future holds. So there's a lot more we want to do with competencies. You've highlighted a couple of the items around different scales, for example, on different frameworks. But there's a lot that we want to get this out there and get feedback from you all. So the key focus for after release will be tracking capabilities. So just a note here that skills plus experience equals capabilities. So the way that we would enable that is allowing the evidence that's been uploaded to the platform in the evidence bank to be used as criteria, and to say that to enable a user to upload evidence that shows that they have a capability within a competency, or they have a capability, and that to mark the competency as proficient, for example. So that's the key area that we want to look at. There are others, so talent management, career planning and gap analysis. So we know that this functionality at the moment doesn't go as far to enable you to look for a role that you maybe want to take on in the future, to be shown the skills that are required and to map your skills against those. But this does enable that. There's all the data is there, all the connections between the competencies and the roles is there. It's just surfacing that to people. Career planning, again, tracking roles and looking into the future, and then also some dedicated screens. So with the talent management side of things, there are reports that will be available that will be able to track every user's proficiency level within competencies. But there isn't a dedicated interface to enable you to search for people with particular skills. It is all based on reporting. So they're some of the key areas that we want to look at, but your feedback on this once it's out will be key to moving that forwards. And I suppose, are there any other questions for me?
There are. I've got a couple too. I'm going to interject. So where do people go to find out more or keep abreast of what's happening with Perform? What's the best way for people to ask you questions?
So we'll be posting on the product updates forum. So this recording will be shared on the product update forum under Total Perform, and we will also, I'll be keeping a regular eye on that. So, or to be completely honest, please feel free to contact me directly if that works best for you. If people don't want to share, I understand.
Okay, and there's some questions. Matt, hey Matt, hi, can competencies be recurring? Can they have a lifespan, e.g. must be achieved every 3 years?
So that's on the roadmap, but we haven't covered it at the moment. We've looked at the complexity with other areas in the platform where we have recurring or expiring items, and it was too big to cover for version 1. So yeah, that will be coming.
Yes, you said it looks awesome. Mark Edmonds, will the first release of Perform have appraisal forms / workflows?
They'll be completely separate to competencies, but yeah, they will include a completely reworked appraisal system.
Okay. What is the update frequency for Perform?
To be confirmed. I have preference that it would be more frequent, but obviously that's something that we need to discuss internally as an organisation.
Okay. And the Perform roadmap.
Yep.
And that's listed under the standard roadmap page,
so
isn't it?
To be completely honest, it is listed on the roadmap page. It hasn't changed for a long time because we are still working towards an initial release. For that initial release, competencies has been completely reworked. Appraisals and 360 feedback we're currently working on completely rebuilding. We will be introducing check-ins, and we will be reworking goals. It says all of that on the roadmap, but that obviously isn't what you want to hear about what the future holds for it. We have a list of that, but obviously I think we want to go live, get your initial feedback, and then produce a solid roadmap for post go live.
Alrighty, and you were asking around the release time frame.
Standard response. So no, Richard is pushing us for that at the moment. We're working with him and the development teams to align a smaller release window. So I think at the partner event, we'll be able to provide you with more information.
Okay, and what plans are there around training and support?
So for training and support, our community team and our documentation team have already written all of the training for competencies. We're also looking at releasing, so for every product, there will be courses, there will be documentation. But in addition to this, we know that performance management for a large number of our partners, is new. It's not learning focused completely. So we are introducing also best practice documentation and guides, which aren't product focused, but will help you sell the product. They will help you with initial training and having those conversations with subscribers.
Okay. In terms of appraisals, David is asking, would love to see what is happening with the appraisal part. Is there a timeline to see that?
There isn't at the moment. We're estimating when we can get that out at the moment, or at least when we can start providing walkthroughs of that. For the partner event, there will be some rich mock-ups that we can provide, but the actual workflows is going to take a little bit longer to share with you.
And we'll probably produce that as a webinar as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And it won't just be a webinar when we're finished with appraisals. We want to get feedback on that as we're building it. So we want to engage you as a community much more frequently.
Okay, and Matt, our 360 goals check-ins as far as competencies yet in terms of development, is everything going okay?
It's going okay, but it's not as far as competencies, no.
Excellent. All right, any more questions, please do fire them. As always, if we close down the session, you think, oh, that's right, I wanted to ask, we will be watching the webinar forum. You're welcome to post in there and Mike can get stuck in and respond. Excellent, you have lots of thank yous, well done.
Thank you.
I think we're wrapping up in terms of questions. We'll just wait for a few more minutes just in case there's anything else. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for your time and thank you for your questions. And thank you, Michael.
Thanks very much.